Artillery fire tore through the defensive line. Alpha platoon was pinned down, wounded soldiers screaming, enemy forces closing in at barely 300 meters. "Any snipers here?" Sergeant Donovan roared through the rain of bullets. No one answered. Until a small, silent girl in the corner of the trench slowly stood up. No expression, no trembling. She pulled back the dust cover and set down a perfectly maintained M107. Seconds later, her first shot ripped through the sky, completely reversing the battle's momentum, and her true identity left the entire platoon speechless. The hilltop position at Ember Ridge was collapsing. Private First Class Leah Hart pressed herself against the collapsed sandbag wall, dirt and shrapnel raining down around her. The thunderous crack of incoming mortar rounds shook the ground beneath her boots. Through the smoke and chaos, she could see what remained of Alpha Platoon 12 soldiers, down from 23 that morning. Sergeant Marcus Donovan crouched behind a damaged communication station, blood streaming from a cut above his eyebrow. His voice cut through the noise, sharp and commanding. "Turner, status on our radio." "Dead, Sarge," Corporal Jake Turner shouted back, ducking as bullets sparked off the metal equipment beside him. "Everything's fried. We're cut off." Donovan cursed under his breath. The tactical situation was deteriorating faster than he could process. Enemy forces identified as a reinforced company from the 3rd Regiment had them outnumbered 3-1. Intelligence had failed them spectacularly. What was supposed to be a lightly defended observation post had turned into a coordinated assault by a battle-hardened unit. "They're flanking left," someone yelled. Donovan risked a glance over the ridge. His stomach dropped. Enemy infantry were advancing in coordinated fire teams, using proper bounding overwatch. These weren't conscripts or irregulars. These were professionals, and Alpha Platoon had no heavy weapons, no air support, and no way to call for reinforcement. "We need to thin them out before they get within grenade range," Donovan said, more to himself than anyone else. His mind raced through options. Direct engagement would be suicide. Retreat meant exposing their backs. They needed precision fire. They needed... "Any snipers here?" The words exploded from his throat, raw and desperate. Silence answered him. Well, not silence. The continuous roar of combat, but no human voice responded. The soldiers around him exchanged helpless glances. Most were riflemen, machine gunners, a couple of grenadiers. Standard infantry, not a designated marksman in the bunch. Donovan felt the crushing weight of command. In less than 10 minutes, the enemy would be close enough to overrun their position. His soldiers would die because he couldn't. "Sergeant." The voice was so quiet he almost missed it. Donovan turned. In the corner of the trench, partially hidden behind a stack of ammunition crates, stood Private Hart. She'd been transferred to Alpha from logistics support just 4 days ago. Quiet girl, kept to herself. Did her work without complaint. He'd barely spoken 10 words to her. She was looking at him now with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not fear, not eagerness, something else entirely. "Hart," Donovan said, confusion cutting through his urgency. "Get down before..." But she wasn't getting down. She was reaching for her military pack, the oversized one that had seemed oddly heavy when she'd arrived. Her movements were deliberate, methodical. She pulled the pack in front of her and began unlacing it with steady fingers. The soldiers nearest to her stopped what they were doing, watching. Leah's hands moved with practiced efficiency. She peeled back layers of carefully arranged gear, not the random jumble of a typical soldier's pack, but organized with almost surgical precision. And there, cushioned in foam padding, was a rifle case. She drew it out. Black polymer, reinforced hinges, military-grade locks. "Hart, what the hell?" Donovan started. She opened the case. Even in the chaos of combat, several soldiers audibly gasped. Nestled inside was an M107 Barrett, 50 caliber anti-material rifle. But this wasn't a standard issue weapon. The barrel had been customized with a specialized muzzle brake. The scope was a Schmidt & Bender 5-25x56 with ballistic turrets that looked hand-calibrated. The entire weapon showed signs of meticulous maintenance, not the kind you learned in basic logistics training. "Where did you get that?" Turner breathed. Leah didn't answer. She was already performing a functions check. Her movements fluid and automatic. Chamber clear, bolt smooth, scope mounts tight. She reached back into her pack and withdrew a magazine loaded with Raufoss MK 211 rounds armor-piercing explosive ammunition. Donovan's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. Logistics personnel didn't carry Barrett rifles. They didn't have access to specialized ammunition. They certainly didn't handle a $50,000 weapon system like they'd been born with it in their hands. "Hart," he said slowly. "Who are you?" She looked up at him. For just a moment, he saw something flash in her eyes. Grief, maybe, or regret. Then it was gone, replaced by cool calculation. "Someone who can help," she said. "If you let me." Another mortar round impacted 30 meters away, showering them with debris. A soldier screamed. The enemy was advancing. Donovan made his decision. "Do it," he said. Leah nodded once. She settled the rifle across the sandbags, adjusting the bipod with minute precision. Her entire demeanor had changed. The quiet, unassuming logistics clerk was gone. In her place was someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. The transformation was immediate and complete. Leah moved to a reinforced section of the defensive wall, selecting her firing position with an expert's eye. She needed good sight lines, structural support for the rifle's recoil, and at least 2 escape routes in case her position was compromised. The spot she chose between 2 concrete barriers near the eastern edge met all 3 criteria. Several soldiers watched her with open confusion. Private Dan Reeves, a young rifleman from Iowa, leaned toward his squad mate. "Since when does logistics know how to handle a Barrett?" "That's not standard issue either," Corporal Sarah Kim whispered back. "Look at that scope. That's at least $5,000 in custom optics." Donovan moved closer, positioning himself where he could observe both Leah and the approaching enemy. Up close, he noticed details he'd missed before. The rifle case bore scuff marks that suggested years of field use. The weapon itself, despite its immaculate condition, showed the subtle wear patterns of a tool that had seen extensive service. And Leah's hands. They moved with the unconscious precision of thousands of hours of practice. She extended the bipod legs, adjusted the cant, and settled behind the scope with the comfortable intimacy of someone returning to a familiar place. Her breathing immediately changed deep, controlled respirations that would minimize movement during the shot. "Hart," Donovan said quietly, "I need to know what I'm working with here. What's your real background?" Leah's eye remained pressed to the scope, tracking movement downrange. "Does it matter right now, Sergeant?" "It matters if I'm about to trust my soldiers' lives to someone I don't know." For a moment, she went still. Then, without moving from her firing position, she spoke. Her voice was steady, clinical. 2 years ago, I was part of an operator training program, Specialized Marksmanship Division, Shadow Line Unit. Donovan felt his blood run cold. Shadow Line. He'd heard whispers in officer briefings about an ultra-classified sniper program that operated in denied areas. Soldiers who could hit targets at extreme ranges, who carried out elimination missions that officially never happened. "You're saying you're a Shadow Line operator? Then why are you here, attached to a regular infantry platoon as a logistics clerk?" "Former operator," Leah corrected. She made a minute adjustment to her elevation turret. "I left the program. They don't usually let people leave, but circumstances allowed it." "What circumstances?" "The kind that make you want to stop killing people," she said flatly. Before Donovan could press further, Leah's entire body tensed. Through her scope, she'd found something. "Enemy sniper," she said. 11 o'clock, 800 meters, in the tree line behind that burnt-out vehicle. Donovan raised his binoculars. He could barely make out the vehicle she mentioned, let alone identify a concealed shooter. "You're sure?" Scope glint. 3 seconds ago. "He's tracking your position, Sergeant, setting up to take out leadership." Donovan's jaw tightened. Standard enemy tactics eliminate command structure first. If he went down, Alpha Platoon would lose cohesion just as the assault reached its peak. "Can you take him?" he asked. Leah was already running calculations. Wind speed, she watched the movement of leaves in the distant trees approximately 12 miles per hour, left to right. Temperature roughly 78 degrees. Barometric pressure. She'd have to estimate based on the morning's reading. Target distance 830 meters. Elevation angle -4 degrees. She adjusted her scope's turrets, each click representing a tiny shift in point of impact at range. Her finger rested along the trigger guard, not yet committed. "Range is optimal," she said. "But there's a problem." What problem? If I take this shot, I'll be announcing our capabilities. Every enemy in visual range will know we have a sniper. They'll adjust tactics, possibly call in their own counter-sniper assets. She paused. And I'll have to keep shooting. Once I start, I can't stop until this is over. Donovan understood what she wasn't saying. Once Leah revealed herself, she'd become a priority target. The enemy would pour fire onto her position. She'd be pinned down, unable to relocate. If their counter-sniper was better than her, she'd die. Another explosion rocked their position. One of his soldiers, Private Thompson, screamed that he was hit. Medic Daniels was already moving, but Donovan could see the blood, too much blood. He looked back at Leah, at the woman who'd hidden herself in plain sight for 4 days, at the weapon that shouldn't exist in a logistics clerk's possession, at the cold, professional calculation in her eyes. "Hart," he said, "I'm giving you authorization to engage. Full autonomy on target selection. Do whatever you need to do." She nodded once. Her breathing deepened, slowed. 4 seconds inhale, 4 seconds exhale. Her heart rate was dropping. He could see it in the pulse point at her neck. 60 beats per minute, 55, 50. Professional snipers trained themselves to shoot between heartbeats when the body was most stable. Leah was settling into that zone now, entering a state of focused calm that seemed impossible given the chaos around them. "Engaging," she said quietly. Her finger moved to the trigger. The pressure built slowly, steadily, avoiding the jerk that could throw off a shot. The Barrett's trigger had a 4-pound pull weight. She applied 3 pounds, then 3.5, then crack. The massive 50 caliber rifle bellowed, the sound unlike anything most of the soldiers had heard before. The muzzle brake redirected the blast laterally, kicking up dust in a violent cloud. Even with the weapon's recoil mitigation systems, it bucked hard against Leah's shoulder. She rode the recoil, maintaining her sight picture through the scope. 830 meters away, through trees and haze and the distortion of heat shimmer, the enemy sniper's rifle tumbled from the tree line. A moment later, his body followed. "Target down," Leah said. Her voice hadn't changed. Calm, clinical. She was already chambering another round. North Ridge, 550 meters. Machine gun nest, 3 personnel. Donovan scrambled to confirm through his binoculars. He could barely see what she was describing. Shapes moving behind a pile of rubble that might be soldiers or might be shadows. "You're certain?" "Yes." He believed her. "Take them," he ordered. Leah adjusted her aim. 2 seconds to recalculate distance, wind, angle. This shot was shorter but more technically difficult. The targets were partially concealed behind cover that would stop normal rifle rounds but not a 50 caliber. She fired. The first soldier in the machine gun crew went down. 3 seconds later, she fired again. The second soldier dropped. The third tried to run. Leah tracked his movement with mechanical precision and sent a third round downrange. 3 shots, 3 kills, elapsed time, 11 seconds. The Alpha Platoon soldiers stared in stunned silence. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. "Who is this girl?" The battlefield dynamics shifted immediately. The enemy advance, which had been pressing forward with confident aggression, suddenly faltered. Radio chatter exploded across their frequencies. Donovan could hear the confusion, even in a language he didn't understand. Their tactical cohesion, so impressive moments before, began to crack. They'd expected resistance. They hadn't expected precision long-range fire. Leah worked with relentless efficiency. Her next target was an officer identified by his position and the way soldiers deferred to him, directing troops from behind an overturned truck. Range, 940 meters. Wind had shifted slightly, now coming from 10 o'clock at 14 miles per hour. She compensated, fired. The officer collapsed. "Command element disrupted," she reported to Donovan. "They're going to pull back to reorganize." "How long do we have?" 3 minutes, maybe 4. She was already scanning for her next target. They'll try to establish new firing positions with better concealment. When they advance again, it'll be more cautious. Slower. Slower is good. Slower keeps my soldiers alive. Leah didn't respond. She'd found another target, a soldier setting up what looked like a mortar tube. At this range, she could see his hands working the base plate into position. Long shot, 1,200 meters. Extreme distance for most marksmen, but still within the M107's effective range. She steadied her breathing. The mathematics ran through her mind automatically now, processed by a part of her brain trained through endless repetition. Bullet drop at this distance would be significant. She'd need to aim roughly 18 feet above the target to compensate for gravity's pull. Wind drift would push the round approximately 4 feet left. The bullet's flight time would be just over 2 seconds, enough time for the target to move if he sensed danger. Leah didn't hesitate. She'd done this shot 100 times before. 1,000 times. She fired. The mortar tube exploded as the .50 caliber round struck its ammunition supply. Secondary detonations rippled outward, taking out 2 nearby soldiers and sending others diving for cover. Indirect fire capability eliminated, Leah said. Donovan was beginning to understand the full scope of what was happening. This wasn't just accurate shooting, this was battlefield control. Every target Leah selected served a purpose, disrupting command, eliminating support weapons, creating chaos in enemy formations. She was systematically dismantling their ability to wage coordinated combat. "Hart," he said slowly, "you're not just a sniper, you're a force multiplier." She chambered another round. Shadowline trained us to operate independently in denied territory. No support, no backup. We had to be able to influence entire engagements alone. A pause. "I haven't done this in 18 months. You haven't lost a step." For the first time since she'd started shooting, Leah's expression flickered. Something passed across her face, not pride, but something darker, heavier. "That's what I'm afraid of," she murmured. Before Donovan could ask what she meant, the enemy situation changed again. Someone on their side had figured out where the shots were originating. Donovan saw movement on the southern ridge, soldiers repositioning heavy weapons to target Alpha's defensive position. "They've found us," he said. "They're bringing up." "I see them," Leah interrupted. "PKM machine gun, 1,100 meters. They're going to try to suppress our position. Can you take them before?" The enemy machine gun opened up. Heavy 7.62 millimeters rounds raked across Alpha's defensive line, sending everyone diving for cover. The bullets impacted with devastating force, tearing through sandbags, sparking off metal equipment. One round passed so close to Donovan's head that he felt the air pressure. Leah didn't flinch. She stayed locked in her firing position, tracking the enemy gun through her scope. The incoming fire was a problem, but not an insurmountable one. The enemy gunner couldn't see her exact position through the dust and debris. He was firing on speculation, walking his rounds across the entire defensive line. She had maybe 5 seconds before he walked those rounds directly onto her. "Hart, get down," Turner shouted from across the trench. Leah's finger found the trigger. The enemy machine gunner was partially concealed behind a protective barrier, presenting only a small target window. But she could see his shoulder, his arm, the side of his head when he leaned out to adjust his aim. She exhaled slowly. Squeezed. Crack. The Barrett roared. The enemy machine gunner's head snapped back. His weapon went silent. But Leah wasn't done. The assistant gunner would take over in seconds, resume firing. She cycled the bolt, acquired the new target, fired again. The assistant gunner fell across his weapon. The enemy suppression fire ceased. In the sudden, relative quiet, Donovan heard one of his soldiers, Private Martinez, speaking in an awed whisper. "I've never seen anything like that. She's not even. She's like a machine." Sarah Kim was staring at Leah with wide eyes. Where did we get her? Why is someone with those skills working logistics? It was a good question. One Donovan intended to get answered when they survived this. If they survived this, "Contact right," someone yelled. Donovan spun. A squad of enemy infantry had used the distraction to advance up a hidden gully on the eastern approach. They were close, less than 200 meters. Too close for Leah's long-range rifle to be practical. "All rifles, engage," Donovan commanded. "Hart, find us their backup positions." The Alpha soldiers opened fire with their assault rifles, laying down a wall of lead to stop the flanking maneuver. The enemy squad went to ground, returning fire. The exchange was intense, chaotic, the kind of close-quarters combat where rifles and grenades decided everything. While that happened, Leah shifted her attention to the bigger picture. She scanned the enemy's rear positions, looking for reserve forces, command elements, anything that would help predict their next move. What she found made her blood run cold. "Sergeant," she said urgently, "they're setting up jamming equipment. Communications disruption. We're already cut off, Donovan replied, still focused on the close-range firefight. Not our communications. Theirs. Leah adjusted her scope, studying the equipment being assembled 600 meters behind enemy lines. They're preparing for something big. Something that requires radio silence from their side. Donovan's gut twisted. Artillery? Worse. Leah's voice was grim. I see drone cases. They're going to push a swarm through to mark our exact positions, then call in precision strikes. That changed everything. If the enemy mapped their defensive positions with drones, they could drop mortars or artillery rounds with surgical precision. Alpha platoon would be obliterated. Can you stop it? Donovan asked. Leah studied the target. The equipment was behind significant cover. The operators were moving quickly, professionally. This wasn't a shot, this was a series of shots, each one more difficult than the last. I'll need cover, she said. They're going to know exactly where I am after the first round. I need your soldiers to keep enemy heads down while I work. Donovan didn't hesitate. He grabbed his radio handset. Local squad comms were still functional. All elements, suppressive fire on western approach. Keep them pinned for 30 seconds. The Alpha soldiers responded immediately, pouring fire toward enemy positions. It wasn't accurate, it didn't need to be. It just needed to make the enemy cautious, to keep them from firing back effectively. Leah focused on her first target, the drone operator. He was moving behind a concrete barrier, only visible in brief glimpses. She'd have to time her shot perfectly, catching him during one of those exposed moments. She watched, waited, their 3 seconds of exposure as he repositioned. She fired. The operator went down. Immediately, return fire zeroed in on her position. Bullets smacked into the sandbags around her, tearing through fabric and sending sand spraying. One round passed within inches of her head. Leah had already shifted slightly, just enough to throw off the enemy's aim. She found her second target, a soldier setting up the jamming antenna. Longer shot, more difficult angle. He was kneeling, presenting a smaller profile. She made the calculation in less than a second. Fired. The soldier collapsed. The antenna toppled. More return fire, heavier now. The enemy was coordinating, multiple weapons converging on her suspected location. Donovan watched in horror as the defensive wall around Leah was systematically shredded by incoming rounds. Hart, pull back, he shouted. She ignored him. One more target. The equipment itself. If she could destroy the control unit, the entire system would be inoperable. But it was small, barely the size of a briefcase, partially hidden behind sandbags. It required a perfect shot. Leah found her breathing rhythm again. The world narrowed to just her, the scope, the target. Everything else, the bullets, the explosions, the screaming faded to background noise. She exhaled halfway, held, squeezed. The Barrett thundered. 800 meters away, the control unit exploded in a shower of sparks and shattered electronics. Mission accomplished. Drone capability eliminated, Leah reported calmly. Then, almost as an afterthought, I need to reload. The intensity of combat had driven most conscious thought from the soldiers' minds, but as the enemy began a tactical withdrawal to regroup, questions emerged. Private Dan Reeves crouched beside Corporal Turner, both of them staring at Leah as she methodically cleaned carbon fouling from her rifle's chamber. That's not normal, Reeves said quietly. That's not even elite. That's something else. Turner nodded slowly. He was a 6-year veteran, had deployed twice before this, seen plenty of trained marksmen. What Leah had just demonstrated went beyond training. It was artistry mixed with cold lethality. The way she moves, Turner said. The way she doesn't react to incoming fire. I've only seen that kind of composure in one type of soldier. What type? Turner hesitated. The kind that scares me. Across the trench, Sarah Kim was having similar thoughts. She'd noticed something odd about the rifle itself. During a brief lull, she'd gotten close enough to see the stock. Scratched into the polymer, barely visible, were initials R.H. Reaper Hart, Kim murmured. What? Private Martinez asked beside her. Kim's eyes widened. Oh my God, Reaper Hart. Who the hell is Reaper Hart? Kim grabbed Martinez's shoulder. You remember last year? That briefing about classified operations in the mountain sectors? They showed us one slide, just one about sniper operations that saved an entire battalion from ambush? Vaguely. They didn't give details. Said it was need to know, but there was a call sign mentioned, just once, Reaper. Kim looked at Leah. The story was that one operator, single-handedly, took out 23 enemy fighters in 40 minutes, including 3 counter-snipers sent specifically to eliminate her. Martinez followed her gaze. You think that's her? Look at the initials on her rifle. R.H. Reaper Heart. It has to be. The rumor spread through the platoon like wildfire. Within minutes, every soldier in Alpha was staring at Leah with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The quiet logistics clerk who'd barely spoken since joining them was allegedly one of the most legendary snipers in recent military history. Donovan heard the whispers. He moved to Leah's position, crouching beside her as she loaded a fresh magazine into the Barrett. We need to talk, he said quietly. We're still in active combat, Sergeant. The enemy is regrouping. We have maybe 10 minutes. He paused. My soldiers think you're someone named Reaper Heart, Shadowline operative, supposed to be dead or retired or disappeared. Want to tell me if they're right? Leah's hands stilled on the rifle. For a long moment, she didn't respond. Then she sighed a heavy sound, full of old weight. Hannah Reaper was my instructor, she said quietly. Best sniper the program ever produced. She taught me everything I know. Another pause. She died 2 years ago. Enemy ambush. I inherited her call sign. So you are Reaper Heart. Was. Leah's voice was flat. I left Shadowline after Hannah died. Requested transfer to non-combat duty. They granted it after I completed one final mission. Donovan waited. When Leah didn't continue, he prompted gently. What mission? Elimination of the enemy commander who killed Hannah and her team. Leah's eyes were distant, focused on something only she could see. Extreme long-range shot, 1,900 meters in urban terrain, 3 civilians nearby, high wind, marginal light. Did you make the shot? Yes. The word was barely a whisper. But by the time the intelligence reached us, by the time I got into position, by the time I pulled the trigger, Hannah had been dead for 16 hours. The mission was revenge, not rescue. I completed it. Then I walked away. Donovan began to understand. You blamed yourself. I blamed the commanders who sent us in without proper support. I blamed the intelligence failures. I blamed the enemy. Leah met his eyes. And yes, I blame myself for not being fast enough, good enough to save her. So you hid, requested logistics duty where you'd never have to pick up a rifle again. I didn't hide, Leah said sharply. I withdrew. There's a difference. I still served. I couldn't be that person anymore. Reaper Heart was someone who killed without hesitation, who traded lives like currency. I wanted to be someone else. And yet, here you are, Donovan said gently, rifle in hand, saving lives instead of taking them. Leah looked down at the Barrett, the weapon that had been her constant companion through years of Shadowline operations. The tool of her trade, the instrument of her greatest successes and her deepest regrets. Hannah used to say something, Leah said quietly. She said every bullet we fire changes the world. Sometimes it saves 1,000 people we'll never meet. Sometimes it destroys something we can't see. We never know which. We just have to trust that we're doing more good than harm. Do you trust that? Donovan asked. Before Leah could answer, Private Reeves called out from his observation post. Sergeant, enemy movement. They're repositioning heavy weapons. Donovan moved to see. His blood ran cold. The enemy had brought up anti-material rifles, weapons designed to destroy equipment and punch through barriers. They were setting up firing positions aimed directly at Alpha's defensive line. They're going to tear through our cover, Donovan said. We'll be completely exposed. Leah had already moved to her rifle. She scanned the enemy positions through her scope, counting weapons and operators. 4 heavy rifles, 8 personnel total, range varying from 700 to 900 meters. All positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. It was a professional setup, designed to neutralize exactly the kind of sniper threat she represented. They know about me now, Leah said. This is a counter-sniper deployment. They're going to try to pin me down while their main force advances. Can you beat them? Leah ran the tactical mathematics. 4-to-1 odds. Enemy had superior positioning, they'd chosen their ground well. If she revealed her position by firing, all 4 would return fire simultaneously. Even if she killed one, the other 3 would bracket her location and destroy her cover. Not conventionally, she admitted. What does that mean? Leah's mind was racing through possibilities, running scenarios she'd trained for but never imagined she'd use again. Shadow line tactics for asymmetric engagement. Ways to turn disadvantage into advantage. It means, she said slowly, I need to make them think I'm somewhere I'm not. Create a false target, draw their fire, then engage from a different position while they're exposed. Donovan frowned. How do you create a false target? Leah looked around the defensive position, inventory of resources clicking through her mind. She spotted a damaged helmet, a torn uniform jacket, and some wooden support poles. Give me 3 minutes and keep everyone away from the eastern barrier. She didn't wait for permission. She moved quickly, assembling a crude decoy helmet propped on poles, jacket stretched across to suggest a human outline. It wouldn't fool anyone up close, but at 800 meters through haze and heat shimmer, it might be convincing enough. Especially if she did one more thing. Leah took a spent shell casing from her earlier shots and positioned it where it would catch sunlight. The brass glinted, a perfect simulation of scope reflection, the exact tell she'd used to identify the enemy sniper earlier. That's smart, Turner said, watching her work. You're giving them a target they'll recognize. More than that, Leah replied. I'm giving them what they expect to see. A sniper who made a mistake, who got careless with light discipline. She moved to a completely different position, 30 feet away from the decoy. They'll fire on it. And when they do... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The trap was set. The enemy took the bait faster than expected. Leah had barely settled into her new firing position when the first enemy sniper spotted the decoy. She saw him tense, saw him signal to his companions. 4 rifles began adjusting aim, converging on the false target. Wait for it, Leah murmured to herself. Wait. 4 muzzle flashes erupted simultaneously. Heavy rounds slammed into the eastern barrier, obliterating the decoy and tearing chunks out of the sandbag wall. The coordinated fire was devastating. If she'd actually been there, she would have died instantly. But she wasn't there. And now, all 4 enemy snipers were exposed, having revealed their exact positions. Leah fired. The leftmost sniper went down. She cycled the bolt, shifted aim, fired again. The second sniper collapsed. The remaining 2 scrambled to relocate, realizing the trap too late. Leah tracked the third sniper as he tried to pull back from his position, led him slightly to account for movement, fired. He dropped mid-stride. The 4th sniper, the smart one, didn't try to run. He'd already identified Leah's actual position and was bringing his rifle around for a shot. It became a race. Who could acquire and fire first? Their rifles boomed simultaneously. Leah felt the impact not on her body but on the barrier inches from her head. The enemy round had missed by a hand's width. Her round. The enemy sniper fell backward, rifle tumbling from his grasp. All counter-sniper elements eliminated, Leah reported, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Donovan had watched the entire exchange with something approaching disbelief. How did you? He shook his head. Never mind. I don't think I want to know. But their reprieve was short-lived. The enemy commander, clearly frustrated by the loss of his sniper team, made a desperate decision. Smoke grenades began landing across the battlefield, dozens of them, creating a thick white curtain between Alpha's position and the advancing enemy forces. They're masking their approach, Turner called out. We're blind. Donovan's jaw clenched. It was a sound tactical move. Without clear sight lines, his soldiers couldn't engage effectively. The enemy could advance under cover of the smoke, close to grenade range, and overwhelm them with superior numbers. Hart, he said urgently, can you? I see them, Leah interrupted. She was already adjusting her scope, switching to thermal imaging mode, a custom addition to her optics that most military-issue scopes lacked. Through the smoke, heat signatures blazed like torches. Thermals giving me clear targets. Through that much smoke, Donovan was incredulous. The wind's shifting, the visibility is irrelevant, Leah said calmly. She was already running enhanced ballistic calculations. Shooting through smoke added variables. The smoke itself could affect bullet trajectory, especially at extreme ranges where even minor air density changes mattered. The wind was gusting unpredictably, swirling around the chemical clouds. This wasn't just difficult, this was at the edge of possible. Leah's breathing slowed. Her heart rate dropped into the low 40s, a physiological response she'd trained through thousands of hours of practice. In this state, her body's microscopic movements minimized. Each heartbeat created tiny tremors, but between beats, she became almost perfectly still. She acquired her first target. Enemy squad leader, 720 meters, moving through thick smoke, thermal signature clear. Wind gusting from 2 o'clock at 16 miles per hour, but eddying around the smoke. Bullet drop compensation normal, but she added a half-minute of angle adjustment for the smoke density. She fired. The heat signature dropped, 1 down. Immediately, she shifted to the next target. Assistant leader, 680 meters, angling left. She compensated for his movement, the wind shift, the distance difference. Fired. The signature collapsed. 2 down. The enemy advance began to falter. Even through the smoke, they could hear the massive Barrett's distinctive report. Soldiers started to realize that the smoke wasn't protecting them, not against someone who could see in thermal. Leah worked with mechanical efficiency. 3rd target, 4th, 5th. Each shot required split-second recalculation as conditions constantly changed. Wind velocity, target movement, smoke density variations. She processed it all instinctively. The years of training and experience compressing complex mathematics into gut feeling. 6 down. 7. 8. Jesus, Sarah Kim breathed. She's dropping them like it's a training range. But the enemy had numbers. For every soldier Leah eliminated, 2 more advanced. They were paying a terrible price for their push, but they were accepting that price, betting that their massed assault would eventually overwhelm a single sniper. They might have been right, if not for one thing. Leah wasn't just shooting to kill, she was shooting to demoralize. Her next target was an officer identified by his heat signature's equipment profile and his position behind the forward elements. Long shot, 890 meters through shifting smoke, he was directing troops, coordinating the assault. Leah put a round through his center mass. The enemy formation's cohesion immediately degraded. Without their officer's leadership, the advancing soldiers lost their organized structure. Some tried to push forward, others hesitated. A few began falling back. "They're breaking," Donovan said, watching through his binoculars as the enemy advance stalled. "You broke them." Leah didn't celebrate. She was already looking ahead, scanning for the next threat, and she found it. "Sergeant," she said urgently, "West Ridge, they're setting up mortars, 3 tubes. If they get those operational, we're done." Donovan swung his attention westward. The smoke was thinning in that direction, giving him visual confirmation. Leah was right. Enemy crew-served weapons were being assembled, angled to drop rounds directly onto Alpha's position. "Range?" he asked. 1,300 meters, through variable wind, partially concealed positions. Leah's voice was tight. "This is extreme difficulty. Can you make it?" She ran the calculations. 1,300 meters was at the very limit of her effective range, even with the Barrett. The wind was unpredictable, gusting between 12 and 18 miles per hour. The targets were small, she'd need to hit the mortar tubes themselves, not the operators. A direct hit on the ammunition would be ideal, but the chances— "I can make it," she said, "but I need perfect conditions. No distractions, no return fire. 3 shots, 3 seconds between each. If I'm interrupted, I'll lose the window." Donovan made an instant decision. All elements, suppressive fire on enemy positions, keep their heads down, give Hart her shots. The Alpha soldiers responded immediately. Rifles barked, machine guns roared, even the grenadiers lobbed rounds toward enemy concentrations. It wasn't accurate fire at these ranges, it couldn't be, but it achieved the goal. Enemy soldiers ducked, sought cover, stopped shooting back. The battlefield quieted just enough. Leah focused on the first mortar tube. The crew was working frantically to get it operational, sensing their time window closing. She could see through her scope how close they were seconds from firing position. She calculated everything one last time: distance, wind, angle, temperature, humidity, Coriolis effect at this range. The Earth's rotation actually mattered at 1,300 meters. She had to account for the planet spinning beneath the bullet during its nearly 3-second flight time. She exhaled halfway, found the space between heartbeats, squeezed, crack. The Barrett's recoil was substantial, but she rode it. keeping her eye to the scope to observe the impact. The bullet's flight time felt eternal, 3 full seconds where anything could happen, wind could shift. The target could move. 1,000 variables could render the shot ineffective. The mortar tube exploded. Direct hit on its ammunition supply. The crew disappeared in the blast. Leah was already shifting to the second tube. No time to celebrate, no time to think, just the mathematics, the breathing, the trigger press. Second shot. Another 3-second eternity. Another explosion. Third tube. The crew had seen what happened to their companions. They were abandoning the weapon, running for cover. But the mortar itself was still intact, still operational if another crew retrieved it. Leah tracked the tube itself. Smaller target, moving as soldiers fled past it, creating visual confusion. Wind gusting harder now, up to 20 miles per hour. She adjusted for everything. Fired. The third mortar tube sparked, tumbled, rendered inoperable. Indirect fire threat eliminated, Leah said. Her voice was steady, but Donovan could see sweat beading on her forehead. Those shots had pushed her to her absolute limit. The enemy attack collapsed completely. Without their snipers, without their mortars, without their officers, the assault force broke apart. Soldiers began withdrawing in disorder, some running, others covering their retreat with ineffective suppressive fire. Alpha Platoon had held. Against overwhelming odds, outnumbered 3 to 1, cut off from support they'd held. Because of one woman with a rifle, the immediate crisis had passed, but Donovan knew better than to relax. Enemy forces were pulling back to regroup, not retreating entirely. They'd return, better prepared, with counter-tactics specifically designed to neutralize Leah's advantage. He moved to her position. She was field-stripping her rifle, checking for any signs of wear or damage from the heavy use. Her movements were automatic, practiced to the point of muscle memory. "How many rounds do you have left?" he asked. 17, Leah replied without looking up. "Maybe 18 if I can reclaim some brass and reload, but that's not advisable under combat conditions." "Will it be enough?" "Depends on what they throw at us next." She reassembled the Barrett with swift efficiency. "They've seen what I can do now. They won't make the same mistakes. Next time, they'll bring overwhelming force or wait until darkness reduces my effectiveness." Donovan studied her. Despite the incredible display of skill, despite saving the entire platoon multiple times, Leah showed no satisfaction, no pride. If anything, she seemed even more withdrawn, more distant. "Hart," he said quietly, "you've been avoiding something. I can see it in how you handle that rifle, like it's both familiar and painful. Want to tell me why you really left Shadowline?" For a long moment, Leah didn't respond. She finished her equipment check, set the rifle carefully aside, and stared at her hands. They were steady, the hands of a professional sniper, but she was looking at them like they belonged to someone else. "Do you know what it's like?" she said slowly. "To make a decision in 3 seconds that you'll think about for 3 years." Donovan waited. "The mission where Hannah died," Leah continued. "We were providing overwatch for an extraction team. Good operation plan, solid intelligence, appropriate force deployment. Everything was textbook." Her voice went flat. "Except intelligence missed one detail. The enemy had a counter-sniper element in the area. Professional, well-trained, hunting specifically for us." She paused, lost in memory. Hannah spotted him first, saw his scope glint from an elevated position overlooking the extraction point. She called it in, requested we engage immediately before he could target our people. "But," Donovan prompted gently, "but command wanted verification. Positive identification, before weapons-free authorization. They were worried about collateral damage. The building he was in had civilian occupants." Leah's jaw clenched, "So we waited. Followed protocol. Requested confirmation through channels." "How long?" 40 seconds. Maybe 45. Leah's hands curled into fists. The enemy sniper didn't wait. He fired on the extraction team, killed 3 soldiers instantly. Then he shifted aim, found Hannah's position. She tried to relocate, but she didn't finish. She didn't need to. "That's when I took the shot," Leah said quietly. "Without authorization, without clearance, I eliminated the threat. But I was 3 seconds too slow. Hannah was already hit. Critical wound. She died before the medevac could reach us." Donovan absorbed this. "So you blame yourself for following orders, For those 3 seconds of hesitation, I blame myself for not trusting my judgment. Hannah knew he was a threat. I knew he was a threat, but I waited for someone else to confirm what we already knew. Leah met his eyes. In this job, 3 seconds is forever. It's the difference between everyone lives and everyone dies. What happened after? Investigation, hearing. They ruled I acted appropriately given the circumstances, cleared me of any wrongdoing. Her voice turned bitter. Then they gave me a promotion and sent me back out. Like Hannah was just an acceptable loss. Like I should just move on. But you couldn't. Every time I looked through that scope, I saw her. Every target I acquired, I calculated whether I was 3 seconds too slow again, whether this would be the shot that killed someone else I cared about. Leah picked up her rifle again, her grip gentle despite the weight of memory. So I requested transfer, told them I was done killing people. I'd serve some other way. Yet here you are, Donovan said, rifle in hand, and you've saved at least 20 lives today that I can count. Because I didn't have a choice. Your soldiers were going to die if I did nothing. She looked at him. But tomorrow, when I'm alone with my thoughts, I'll still see every person I dropped today. I'll still count the seconds between identification and engagement. I'll still wonder if any of them deserved better than a bullet from a woman who was too damaged to do her job right. Donovan sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. You want to know what I see when I look at you? Leah didn't respond, but she didn't move away either. I see a soldier who made impossible shots under impossible conditions, who fought through her own trauma to save people she barely knew, who carried the weight of her past and still stepped up when it mattered most. He paused. Hannah would be proud of you. Hannah would tell me I'm being an idiot, Leah said, but there was the faintest hint of a smile. She always said dwelling on past mistakes was a waste of cognitive resources better spent on present survival. Sounds like a wise woman. She was. Leah's expression softened slightly. She also said that every bullet changes the world, remember? She believed that. Even when it meant making hard choices, she believed we were making the world better. Before Donovan could respond, Private Reeves called out urgently, "Sergeant, movement on North Ridge, they're coming back." Both Donovan and Leah moved to observation positions. What they saw made Donovan's blood run cold. The enemy hadn't just regrouped, they'd reinforced. At least another company's worth of soldiers was moving into position, supported by armored vehicles and what looked like mobile artillery. "That's not a probe," Donovan said grimly. "That's an annihilation force." Leah scanned the enemy deployment through her scope, running tactical assessments, vehicle-mounted weapons, indirect fire capability, overwhelming infantry support. They'd assembled everything needed to crush Alpha Platoon through sheer firepower. "They're not taking chances this time," she observed. "They're going to flatten this entire ridge, then advance through the debris to confirm kills. Can we hold?" Leah ran the mathematics. 17 rounds remaining, multiple high-value targets. But even if every shot was perfect, even if she achieved a 100% kill rate, it wouldn't be enough to stop this assault. "No," she said simply. "We can't hold, not against that." Donovan felt the weight of command crushing down on him. He'd held out hope that reinforcements would arrive, that somehow they'd survive until support showed up. But looking at the enemy force assembling, he knew they were out of time. "Then we retreat," he said, "fighting withdrawal. They'll cut us down before we make it 50 meters, Leah interrupted. "Look at their deployment. They've got all our retreat routes covered. This is a kill box." She was right. Donovan could see it. Now the enemy had positioned forces specifically to prevent withdrawal. Alpha Platoon was trapped. "Then, what do we do?" he asked, hearing the desperation creep into his voice. Leah studied the enemy formation for a long moment. Her mind was working through possibilities, scenarios, tactical options that bordered on suicidal. There was one chance. Maybe. It would require perfect execution, incredible luck, and a willingness to sacrifice pieces to save the whole. "I have an idea," she said slowly. "But you're not going to like it. Tell me. I need to get to the highest point on this ridge. The old observation tower at the summit. It's exposed, indefensible, and roughly 600 meters from here." Donovan looked at the tower she meant. It was a partially collapsed structure from previous battles, jutting up above the ridgeline like a broken tooth. Anyone positioned there would be visible from every angle, vulnerable to fire from multiple directions. "That's a death trap," he said flatly. "Yes," Leah agreed, "but it's also the only position with clear sightlines to every enemy formation simultaneously. From there, I can engage their command structure, their fire support, and their vehicle crews. You'd be completely exposed. They'd see you instantly." "I know." Donovan shook his head. "I can't authorize that. It's suicide." "It's calculated risk," Leah corrected. "And it's our only option. I draw their entire focus onto me. Every weapon they have will be firing at that tower, which means they won't be firing at your soldiers." Understanding dawned on Donovan. "You want to be the bait. Pull their attention while the platoon retreats. More than that, I'll create enough chaos in their formations that they'll be too disorganized to effectively pursue. By the time they realize what's happening, you'll be clear." "And what happens to you?" Leah's expression was calm, almost serene. "I do what I was trained to do. I hold the line." "Alone?" "Alone." Donovan wanted to refuse, wanted to order her to stand down, to find another way, to not throw her life away for his soldiers. But he'd seen enough combat to recognize when there were no good options left, only necessary ones. "How long can you hold?" he asked quietly. "Long enough," Leah said. "That's all that matters." The decision was made, but executing it required precision timing. Donovan gathered his squad leaders, Turner, Kim, and Reeves. He sketched out the plan in quick, efficient strokes. "Hart's going to draw enemy fire from the observation tower. The moment she opens up, we initiate withdrawal. South route, through the gully. Fast and quiet." "What about Hart?" Turner asked. "She'll follow when she can." The lie felt heavy on Donovan's tongue, but it was necessary. If his soldiers knew Leah was planning to hold alone until they were clear, some of them would refuse to leave, and that would defeat the entire purpose. Kim wasn't fooled. She's not planning to follow, is she? This is a holding action. Donovan met her eyes. Her choice, her mission. "That's not." "Stand down, Corporal," Donovan said, his voice hard. "We don't have time for debate. Get your people ready to move on my signal." While his squad leaders reluctantly dispersed to prepare, Donovan moved back to Leah. She was already gathering her equipment, rifle, ammunition, a few essential supplies, traveling light. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Yes, I do." Leah finished securing her gear. 3 years ago, I was 3 seconds too slow, and someone died because of it. Today, I'm going to make sure I'm not too slow again." "This isn't the same situation, isn't it?" Leah looked at him. "You have 28 soldiers under your command. Good people. They have families waiting for them. Dreams. Futures. If I do nothing, most of them will die in the next 30 minutes. If I do this, most of them survive. And you?" "I stopped being afraid of dying a long time ago, Sergeant. Now I'm just afraid of not mattering." She picked up her rifle. "Today, I matter. Today, I'm not 3 seconds too slow." Before Donovan could respond, the first enemy artillery rounds began falling. The bombardment was devastating. Heavy shells rained down on Alpha's position, designed not for precision but for area saturation. The enemy was softening the target, preparing the killing ground. Explosions erupted across the ridge. Sandbags disintegrated. Equipment was tossed like toys. The noise was overwhelming, a continuous roar that made thinking difficult, communication almost impossible. "They're preparing for final assault," Turner shouted over the din. Donovan knew Turner was right. Standard tactics, artillery prep, then armored advance, then infantry mop-up. By the book, effective, deadly. "Hart, go now!" he yelled. But Leah had already moved. She was sprinting toward the observation tower, staying low, using every scrap of cover. Artillery shells continued to fall, some landing close enough that the blast pressure knocked her sideways. She rolled, came up, running, didn't stop. Private Martinez watched her go, mouth hanging open. She's completely exposed out there. She's going to... An explosion cut him off. Dirt and shrapnel erupted exactly where Leah had been a second before, but she'd already moved, already adjusted her path, reading the artillery pattern like it was a language she understood. She reached the tower's base. The structure was a mess, partially collapsed walls, exposed rebar, unstable floors. But it was tall, giving elevation and sight lines. That was all that mattered. Leah began climbing. The metal stairs were damaged, some sections missing entirely. She had to hand-over-hand climb in places, hauling herself and her heavy rifle up through gaps in the structure. Every few seconds, another artillery round landed nearby, shaking the entire tower. The building swayed, groaned, threatened to collapse. Leah kept climbing. She reached the top level, barely a floor, more like a platform with significant portions missing. Wind whipped through the open spaces. Below her, she could see the entire battlefield spread out like a map. Enemy formations. Alpha's defensive position. The terrain between. Perfect. She set up her rifle on the most stable section she could find, wedging the bipod between chunks of broken concrete. The position was exactly as bad as she'd anticipated, completely exposed from multiple angles, structurally unsound, vulnerable to even a single well-placed shot. But the sight lines were flawless. Through her scope, Leah began cataloging targets. Enemy command vehicle, 900 meters. Artillery crew, 750 meters. Infantry company leader, 820 meters. Armored personnel carrier, 1,000 meters. Too many targets, not enough bullets. She'd have to make every shot count. Below, Donovan watched the tower through his binoculars. He could just barely make out Leah's silhouette at the top, setting up her firing position. Any second now, she'd take her first shot, and all hell would break loose. "All squads, stand by," he said into his radio. "Prepare to move on my mark." "Sergeant," Kim said beside him, "we're really going to leave her up there alone?" "We're going to honor her choice and make sure her sacrifice matters," Donovan replied, his voice tight. "Now check your soldiers and prepare to move." Kim nodded reluctantly and moved off. Donovan took one last look at the tower, at the woman who'd appeared out of nowhere, who'd hidden her incredible skills behind a facade of quiet normalcy, who was now about to make a stand that would either become legendary or be forgotten entirely, depending on whether any of them survived to tell the story. "Don't be 3 seconds too slow," he murmured. At the top of the tower, Leah's breathing slowed, her heart rate dropped. The chaos of artillery, the wind, the structural instability of her position, all of it faded to background noise. There was only the scope, the target, the mathematics. She acquired her first target, the command vehicle. The enemy was using it to coordinate the entire assault. Take it out, and they'd lose cohesion. Range, 912 meters. Wind, 18 miles per hour, gusting from 3 o'clock. Target moving slowly left. Armor plating meant she needed a specific hit viewport or rear engine compartment. She found the viewport, saw the shadow of a figure inside. Exhaled halfway. Squeezed. The Barrett roared. 900 meters away, the command vehicle's windshield exploded. The vehicle swerved, stopped. Radio chatter across enemy frequencies descended into chaos, and every enemy weapon on the battlefield swung toward the observation tower. "Now!" Donovan yelled. "Move! Move! Move!" Alpha platoon erupted into motion, soldiers sprinting for the gully route, while enemy attention was focused elsewhere. They moved in practiced fire teams, covering each other, fast but controlled. At the tower, Leah was already engaging her second target, the artillery crew. They were scrambling to redirect their fire toward her position, but she was faster. 2 shots, 2 crewmen down. The artillery piece went silent. Return fire began hammering the tower. Bullets sparked off metal, punched through concrete, filled the air around her with lethal fragments. The entire structure shuddered under the impact. Leah didn't flinch. Third target, fourth, fifth. Each shot she fired created more chaos in enemy ranks. Officers went down. Vehicle crews were eliminated. Communication nodes were destroyed. The organized assault began to fragment into confused, leaderless groups. But the volume of return fire was intensifying. The enemy had recognized the threat and was pouring everything they had toward the tower. Machine guns, rifles, even vehicle-mounted weapons, all converging on a single point. The observation tower was being systematically demolished around her. A section of floor gave way. Leah shifted her position, found new stable ground, kept shooting. A wall collapsed. She adjusted again. The entire structure was coming apart, piece by piece, and she was running out of places to set up. Below, Alpha platoon was making good progress. They'd covered nearly 300 meters, using the chaos to mask their withdrawal. Enemy forces hadn't even noticed they were leaving yet, too focused on the devastating fire coming from the tower. Donovan risked a glance back. The tower was a ruin now, barely standing, engulfed in dust and debris from constant impacts. He couldn't see Leah anymore. Couldn't tell if she was still alive. But the rifle kept firing. That distinctive Barrett report, steady and relentless, she was still in the fight. The observation tower had become what military theorists called death ground, a position so dangerous that survival was impossible. Sun Tzu wrote that soldiers placed on death ground would fight with desperate ferocity, knowing there was no retreat. Leah embodied that principle now. She'd abandoned her original firing position after a burst of machine gun fire nearly took her head off. The platform she'd been using collapsed entirely, forcing her to wedge herself into a corner between two still-standing walls. It was cramped, unstable, and offered minimal protection, but she could still see the battlefield, could still shoot. 11th shot, enemy squad leader coordinating an advance, down. 12th shot, machine gunner providing suppressive fire, down. 13th shot, radio operator trying to restore communications, down. The enemy assault had completely stalled. What should have been an overwhelming final push had devolved into chaos. Squads were pinned down, leaderless. Vehicles were disabled, or their crews too afraid to expose themselves. The entire formation had ground to a halt, all because of one woman with a rifle. But Leah was running out of options. She had 4 rounds left. The tower was collapsing, and she'd identified a new threat, an enemy counter-sniper team setting up positions specifically to eliminate her. Through her scope, she could see them, 2 soldiers, 1 spotter and 1 shooter, moving with professional efficiency. They'd found a position with excellent sightlines to the tower. In less than a minute, they'd be ready to engage. And Leah would be their easiest target of the day, stationary, exposed, with nowhere to go. She could try to take them out first, but the range was extreme, 1,400 meters, and her position was unstable. The odds of making that shot were maybe 30%. If she missed, she'd reveal her exact location to a trained sniper actively hunting her. But if she didn't take the shot, they'd kill her within minutes anyway. Leah made her decision. She repositioned her rifle, finding the steadiest brace point she could manage. The tower swayed beneath her, either from wind or structural damage. She couldn't tell. Her scope's crosshairs drifted across the target in slow, nauseating circles. This shot was at the absolute edge of impossible. She watched the enemy sniper through her scope. He was good, patient, methodical, taking time to ensure his setup was perfect. That caution would be his weakness. It gave her a few extra seconds. Leah ran the ballistics. 1,400 meters meant significant bullet drop she'd need to aim roughly 23 feet above the target to compensate for gravity. Wind was gusting unpredictably, sometimes 18 miles per hour, sometimes 25. The tower's movement added another variable, making her position unstable. And she had one chance. If she missed, she'd never get another shot. She watched, waited, felt the tower sway, learning its rhythm. Back and forth, 3-second cycle. At the midpoint of each sway, there was a brief instant of relative stability. She'd have to time her shot to that instant. The enemy sniper was almost ready. She could see him settling behind his rifle, beginning his own target acquisition process. In seconds, he'd be looking through his scope directly at her. Leah found her breathing rhythm, slowed her heart rate. The world narrowed to just her scope, the target, the rhythm of the swaying tower. Back, forth, back, forth. Midpoint. She fired. The bullet's flight time was nearly 4 seconds. 4 seconds where the enemy sniper continued his setup, unaware death was traveling toward him at supersonic speed. 4 seconds where wind could shift, where the bullet could drift, where 1,000 variables could render the shot ineffective. The enemy sniper's head snapped back. His rifle tumbled. His spotters stared in shock, trying to understand what had just happened. Leah was already moving, abandoning her position before return fire could find her. The enemy knew her location now. Staying put meant death. She scrambled across the unstable floor, heading for the far side of the tower. Behind her, the corner she'd just vacated exploded under concentrated fire. Concrete chunks rained down. Steel supports screamed. The tower's collapse was imminent. Minutes at most. Leah found a new firing position barely more than a crack between 2 walls. She couldn't see much of the battlefield from here, but she had limited sight lines to one critical target: the armored personnel carrier that had been positioning to support the infantry advance. 3 rounds left. She aimed at the vehicle's engine compartment. The armor was thick, designed to stop most small arms fire, but a .50 caliber round at 900 meters, hitting at just the right angle. She fired. The round punched through the engine block. The vehicle died, stranding its infantry passengers. 2 rounds left. Movement below caught her attention. Alpha platoon was almost clear, nearly 500 meters from their original position. A few more minutes and they'd be beyond effective pursuit range. Her mission was almost complete, but the enemy had finally noticed the withdrawal. A squad was breaking off from the main force, moving to intercept Alpha's retreat path. Leah calculated quickly. 8 soldiers in the pursuit squad, 2 bullets. She couldn't stop all of them, but if she could take out their leader and their automatic weapons specialist, she could slow them enough for Alpha to escape. She acquired the squad leader. Fired. He went down. 1 round left. The weapons specialist was carrying a light machine gun, hanging back slightly from the main group. If he got into position, he could shred Alpha's rear elements. Leah had to stop him. But her final shot was complicated by something she'd been avoiding acknowledging. The tower was collapsing. Right now, beneath her. She could feel the structure giving way, supports failing, floors pancaking. In seconds, the entire building would come down, and she'd go with it. 1 shot, 1 second to make it. 1 chance to ensure Alpha's escape. Leah didn't hesitate. She acquired the weapons specialist, calculated wind and distance with desperate speed, and fired her last round just as the floor began dropping out from under her. She didn't see if the shot hit. The tower was falling, and she was falling with it. Metal screamed, concrete shattered. The world became a chaotic tumble of debris and dust and gravity. Leah tried to protect herself, curling around her rifle, letting her body armor absorb what impacts it could. But there was too much, falling too fast. She hit something hard, then something harder. Pain exploded through her shoulder, her ribs, her leg. The world went gray. Consciousness returned slowly, accompanied by pain. Leah was buried under debris, not completely, but enough to pin her in place. Her left arm was trapped beneath a concrete slab. Her rifle was somehow still in her right hand, battered but intact. Blood ran down her face from a cut somewhere on her scalp. She tried to move. White-hot pain lanced through her ribs. Broken, probably, maybe multiple. Her vision swam. Through the settling dust, she could hear voices. Enemy soldiers, close by, searching through the rubble. They were looking for her body, wanting to confirm the kill. Leah forced herself to breathe slowly, quietly. Every inhalation felt like knives in her chest, but she couldn't risk being heard. Her hand tightened on the rifle, but she had no ammunition left. The Barrett was just an expensive club now. Footsteps approached. 2 soldiers, speaking in hushed tones. They were 10 feet away, then 5. Leah's mind raced. She was injured, trapped, unarmed. If they found her, she was dead. But if she stayed silent, let them pass. One of the soldiers stepped on the rubble pile directly above her. Pebbles and dust cascaded down. She held her breath, ignored the pain, made herself absolutely still. "Nothing here," the soldier said in accented English. "Tower killed her. Let's check the said." He never finished the sentence. Gunfire erupted from the south, not enemy weapons, but friendly fire, American weapons. The cavalry had finally arrived. Relief forces had broken through, a full company, with armored support, hitting the enemy's flank with devastating effect. The soldiers searching for Leah immediately abandoned their search and ran to join the fight. Leah listened to them go, then allowed herself a shaky exhale. Pain washed over her in waves. She was definitely badly hurt, possibly critically, but she was alive. Alpha platoon had made it. The relief force had arrived. The mission was complete. She let her head fall back against the rubble, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the entire battle was draining away, leaving just pain and weariness. "Hart, Hart, where are you?" Donovan's voice. He'd come back, stupid, dangerous, completely inappropriate tactically, and exactly what she needed to hear. "Here," she called out weakly. "Under the tower." Footsteps pounded closer. Then hands were moving debris, Soldiers working frantically to uncover her. Donovan's face appeared above her, streaked with dirt and blood, but alive, intact. "You magnificent idiot," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You absolute magnificent idiot." "Did everyone make it?" Leah asked. 27 out of 28, Donovan said. "We lost Thompson to his wounds during the withdrawal, but everyone else," he shook his head, "everyone else is because of you." Medics arrived, beginning their assessment. Broken ribs, confirmed, fractured left arm, concussion, severe contusions, but nothing immediately life-threatening. She'd be in a hospital for weeks, face months of recovery, but she'd live. As they prepared to move her to an evacuation vehicle, Leah looked back at the ruins of the observation tower. She'd made her stand there, held death ground against overwhelming odds, and survived. "Hannah would be proud," she murmured. "What?" Donovan asked. "Nothing." Leah managed a small smile. "Just finishing something I started 3 years ago." 3 weeks later, Forward Operating Base Campbell. Leah sat in a hospital bed, her arm in a cast, her ribs still tightly wrapped. The concussion symptoms had mostly faded. The physical wounds were healing. The other wounds, she was working on those. The door opened. Donovan entered, now wearing a fresh uniform with new insignia. They'd promoted him for the action at Ember Ridge. He carried a folder under his arm. "You look better," he said. "I feel like I was hit by a truck," Leah replied. "But yeah, better than 3 weeks ago." Donovan sat in the chair beside her bed. For a moment, they just looked at each other, two soldiers who'd been through something extraordinary together. "Command wants to see you," Donovan said finally. "They've read all the reports, seen the battlefield assessments. They know what you did." "I did my job." "You saved 27 lives while holding off a reinforced enemy company alone. That's a bit beyond doing your job." He opened the folder. "They want you back in Shadowline. Full reactivation. You'd have your pick of assignments." Leah had been expecting this. "And if I refuse? Then they'll respect your decision." "But they wanted me to deliver the offer personally." Donovan paused. "What are you going to do?" Leah looked down at her hands. The same hands that had fired 43 shots that day. The same hands that had taken 43 lives to save 27. The mathematics was cold, clinical, but the weight was anything but. "Hannah told me once that every bullet changes the world," she said quietly. "I spent 3 years trying to forget that, trying to be someone who didn't carry that weight." She looked up. "But at Ember Ridge, I remembered something else she said. She said the weight is proof we're human. Proof we care. The day it stops feeling heavy is the day we've lost something essential. So I'm going to carry it, but I'm going to choose what I'm carrying it for." She met Donovan's eyes. "Tell Command I'll come back, but on my terms. I don't want to be a ghost anymore. No more Black Ops, no more missions that officially never happened. If I'm going to do this, I want to know who I'm protecting and why." Donovan smiled. "They anticipated you might say that. There's a new program. Training the next generation of precision marksmen. Teaching them not just how to shoot, but how to carry the weight. They want you to lead it." Leah considered this. Teaching, passing on Hannah's lessons, making sure the next generation understood both the power and the responsibility. "I accept," she said. "Good," Donovan stood. "Oh, and one more thing. The soldiers from Alpha have been asking about you, non-stop. They want to visit, if you're up for it." "All of them?" "Every single one. You're kind of their hero now." Leah felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I'm not a hero. You just held death ground against impossible odds to save people you barely knew. You just made shots that will be taught in sniper schools for decades. You just became exactly the kind of legend Hannah was." Donovan's expression softened. "Whether you like it or not, you matter. To them, to me, to everyone who'll hear this story." "Hannah would tell me I'm being an idiot again," Leah said, but she was smiling now. "Probably, but she'd also tell you to accept it with grace and move forward." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Hey, Hart?" "Yeah?" "That day at the Ridge, when you were in the tower, you could have followed us, could have withdrawn with the platoon when you had the chance. Why did you stay?" Leah thought about how to answer. About 3-second delays and 3-year regrets. About bullets that change the world and weights that prove we're human. About a woman named Hannah, who taught her that sometimes the hardest choices are the most necessary ones. Because, she said finally, I wasn't 3 seconds too slow anymore. I was exactly on time, and that mattered. Donovan held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded, once, with profound respect. Welcome back, Reaper. After he left, Leah sat alone in the quiet hospital room. Outside, the sun was setting over the base, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Tomorrow, she'd begin physical therapy. Next month, she'd start her new assignment. Next year, she'd train soldiers who might one day face their own impossible choices. But today, she just sat and watched the sunset. And for the first time in 3 years, the weight she carried didn't feel quite so crushing. It felt like purpose. 6 months later, sniper training facility, Fort Harrison. Instructor Hart stood before a class of 23 students, all of them eager, nervous, and completely unprepared for what she was about to teach them. Precision marksmanship isn't about guns, she began. It's not about bullets or ballistics or how steady your hands are. It's about decisions, split-second choices that you'll carry for years. She paused, letting that sink in. Every shot you take changes the world in ways you can't always see. Sometimes it saves lives, sometimes it costs them. You'll never know which until long after the bullet has left the barrel. All you can do is trust that you're doing more good than harm. One student, a young woman who reminded Leah of herself at that age, raised her hand. How do you carry that weight, ma'am? How do you keep going when every shot matters so much? Leah thought of Hannah, thought of Ember Ridge, thought of 43 shots and 27 lives and the difference between 3 seconds too slow and exactly on time. You carry it, she said simply, by remembering why it's heavy. The day it stops weighing on you is the day you need to put down the rifle and walk away. But as long as you feel it, as long as it matters, she smiled slightly, then you know you're still human, still capable of doing good, still worth the trust people place in you. She picked up her rifle, the same M107 from that day, repaired and restored. Now let's talk about wind reading. Because understanding wind is the difference between a perfect shot and 3 seconds too slow, the students leaned forward, ready to learn. And in a hospital room 3 years ago, in the memory of a tower that no longer stood, in the echo of words spoken by a woman who would never be forgotten, Hannah would have smiled. Because her student had finally learned the most important lesson, not how to shoot, but why it mattered. And that was everything.